Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Connecting Dots podcast. As usual, I'm your host Osama, and today I've been joined by Ahmed Asif, who's currently working as a product manager. But he has an amazing professional track record of working for some of the top tier tech companies in the world. So, with that, let's get started. Ahmed, how's your day going so far?
Days are going pretty good, Salman. Thank you for asking. Really good to be here, and again, thank you for having me here. I am really excited to do this with you, and looking forward to this.
Amazing. Thanks a lot. So, let's get started. Ahmed, first of all, provide us with an elevator pitch about your professional journey. How has it been so far,
hmm
and how's it going?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm currently a product manager too at Amazon. I just actually joined Amazon. Before this, I was at
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft, also working as a product manager. Um, and before Microsoft, I finished my degree in computer science from a university in Canada. So I've always been in tech, have always wanted to be in tech, and
Mm-hmm.
so kind of being here is kind of surreal for me, especially considering the journey that I've had. And yeah, that's a little short pitch about me.
So I want to ask you some very structured tech questions initially.
hmm
So first one that I can quickly think of is that I really want to ask you about the job role of product management. How is it different from program management? And typically, what does a product manager do, and why is the need for such a role?
Yeah, for sure. So in the industry, these roles are used interchangeably a lot. A lot of times, these roles aren't very well defined as well. Like,
Mm-hmm.
for example, certain companies have a subset of program management or product managers working as program managers, and so that's a really good question. So product managers essentially are really responsible for the product or a feature within a product or a service. For example, they're responsible for writing the requirements, doing the initial research, then translating that research into customer requirements, and then
Mm-hmm.
passing that on to the engineering to create a product or a service
Mm-hmm.
based on those requirements. Program managers, on the other side, they're more responsible on doing the tasks related
Mm-hmm.
to that particular product or feature. So that could involve being involved more so on the deadline side. Let's say, for example, that you've divided your product that you're working on into certain features, and each feature is divided into certain user stories with deadlines.
Mm-hmm.
And so the program manager could be tasked with making sure that the deadlines are on they're on schedule, and really coordinating all the communication between the different stakeholders that are involved, such as the product managers, the UX UI team, the engineering team, and whatnot. So again, just to kind of reiterate, like product managers are more involved on the product side, like big picture, writing the requirements, whereas program managers
Mm-hmm.
are more involved in the day to day. For example, like communicating, coordinating between stakeholders, and really making sure that the deadlines are on track to be completed.
Right. And since typically what I've usually seen is that when people start working in tech, they rather become very focused in engineering. But you've chosen a
hmm
slightly different route for yourself where now there's more of people management, there's, technical engineering work as well. So how
hmm
did you started developing an interest for this position initially?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, like I did my bachelor's in computer science, and so I've always really been interested in tech.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was about in my fourth year, when I think so just a little bit of context. I did a lot of software dev internships in my undergrad,
Mm-hmm.
and so I already had an idea of what software development looked like.
Mm-hmm.
But then in my fourth year, I
Mm-hmm.
pursued my startup full time. And when I pursued my startup, I kind of played a lot of different hats. So,
Mm-hmm.
I was working as a technical co founder. I was also working as
Nice.
someone who was developing the product.
Yeah.
And so it didn't come to me overnight, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
My passion for this area, this industry didn't come from overnight.
Mm-hmm.
As I experienced wearing different hats as a co founder,
Yeah.
one of them being, developing my product. I actually really
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed doing that. And so after my startup
Mm-hmm.
experience, I wanted to pursue it full time.
Mm-hmm.
And so slowly I kind of made the transition from, like software development into a product management type of role.
Right.
Um, And I kind of wanted to be that sort of
Mm-hmm.
PM that could not only understand the business side but also understand the technical side
Right.
very, very properly.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of fit in pretty well. I do still believe that really good product managers, they don't necessarily have to come from a technical background, but
Mm-hmm.
they really need to understand the product in and out, and that involves knowing the product from a technical standpoint as well. So.
Right, right. And now, if we were to specifically talk about system design, how should engineering teams set their product up for success right from the start of software development?
hmm I think it really comes down to two things, which is really planning
Mm-hmm.
and communicating, and then number two, sorry, actually requirements, and then
Mm-hmm.
number two is planning and designing around requirements.
Mm-hmm.
And so um, for engineering teams to create a solid system design of the product, they
Mm-hmm.
really need to have clear cut requirements, and those requirements can be given to them by a product manager who's done his due diligence and proper research
Right.
into figuring out what the product is supposed to look
Mm-hmm.
like. um, Doing half-assed research, and then
Yeah.
going to the engineering team with a not so good requirement section
Mm-hmm.
isn't the best idea into developing a product or a feature or a
Mm-hmm.
service. And so I think the best thing that the engineering team can do is to have solid requirements that are given to them by the product manager, and then really planning around it.
Right. Interesting. So, were there any myths that were busted for you once you started in this role?
Um, I would say that, in the industry at the moment, the product manager role is very, everybody wants to kind of get into it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a great role to be in.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I would say it's not so great if you really just want to be in the role because of what certain standards are,
Mm-hmm.
right? For example, a lot of companies don't have the anonymity. A lot of companies are not very product driven,
Mm-hmm.
where product managers kind of work as the mini CEOs of a product. That's
Right.
typically not how it works
Okay.
in a lot of big companies. And so that was one myth that was kind of busted for me, where I thought that I'd have the entire anonymity to do whatever I want,
Right.
but that's really not how it works. Um, some companies are a lot more engineering driven. For example, Google is a lot more engineering driven.
Right.
When I worked at Microsoft, there were some teams that were a lot more engineering driven
Mm-hmm.
compared to being a lot more product driven.
Okay.
If that makes any sense. And so, um, yeah, I would say like that was the biggest thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And
yeah.
that's a very interesting point that you've touched upon about these big tech companies. As an outsider, I've usually seen that there's a lot of young leaders at work. They, especially with program managers, product managers, I always see on LinkedIn that there are people younger than me serving these positions. Because at least in my domain, in telecom, I've not really seen young people. But the people who
hmm
are in these roles are typically very stressed. They are talking to
hmm
so many stakeholders at the same time. I wonder how they manage
hmm
their lives, to be honest. But I mean, they're doing an amazing job at it as well. Um,
hmm
but what is the key towards empowering these young people to take such leadership roles and be successful at it nonetheless?
hmm It's definitely challenging. Like creating new leaders is definitely a hard task,
Mm-hmm.
specifically in today's industry where everyone is very opinionated, and everyone wants to have the best of the best.
Yes.
Higher salary, work from home,
Yeah.
best work from home perks, and all that kind of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely hard, and keeping that balance is also very hard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I would say, really,
Mm-hmm.
it's really being very clear and
Mm-hmm.
transparent through the interview processes, and just letting the candidates know, especially the
Mm-hmm.
young leaders, know that what they're going to be coming in at. For example, I know that a lot of people my age, and our age, they really want to make an impact,
Right.
and the reality is, a lot of people can't make an impact when they join the workplace, especially at our ages. It takes time
Correct.
to build relationships. It takes time to
Yeah.
make an impact because it's a slow process,
Yeah.
right? And so the one thing that the existing leaders can do is really being upfront and honest about what and how long a particular task will take, how long before someone can make an impact, especially the young leaders,
Right.
and before they have any problems and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So really, it's about being transparent, being more clear, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Right. So other than that, what is the most optimal way of building competency for these kind of positions? I mean, you can
Hmm.
do certifications, but that's just one part of it. There has to be some sort of
Hmm.
on-job training, or you have to be in the pool to learn swimming. You can read about it, but unless you
For
are in the
sure.
pool, you can't be a swimmer. So what's your take
Hmm.
on that?
Yeah. So I think like being a product manager is super easy.
Mm-hmm.
There's no really certifications that are really needed for it. You don't have to go to school to become a product manager.
Mm-hmm.
Really, what it comes down to is, is having a very clear cut vision,
Mm-hmm.
or developing a vision for the product. So um, I think the one thing that people need to understand, or product managers do or learn over time, is that there are multiple solutions to solving a problem. And so
Mm-hmm.
to become a product manager, to become a good product manager, to
Yeah.
really dive deeper into what you're doing, is
Mm-hmm.
when you're working on a product or a
Mm-hmm.
feature or a service, learn to look at it from multiple lenses,
Mm-hmm.
because oftentimes as PMs, we're so focused on the problem that we forget that there may be multiple solutions to it.
Yeah.
For example, let's say, for example, and I read this example online as well, that there's an elevator that's really slow, and
Mm-hmm.
the management team has asked, the person or the product owner for this particular elevator to make it
Mm-hmm.
fast. And so um, now the product owner is so much more focused on making sure that the elevator is fast, that he's or she's forgotten about all the other things that they can do with it. For
Right.
example, you don't just have to increase the speed up and down.
Yeah.
What you can do is make the elevator more, um, you know, uh, fun to be in while it's going up or down. So put up mirrors so that people can look at themselves. Put in music so people can relax while, when the elevator is going up, or all these different
Right.
things that can come along with it, right?
Yeah.
So don't be so focused on the core problem. There's a lot
Uh-huh.
more things that you can do with it, and so
Mm-hmm.
have an open mindset. I think that's where you should start, um, and
Mm-hmm.
really, it's about, as I mentioned, you don't have to go to school or anything for it. You don't have to do any certifications for it. It's just so
Mm-hmm.
you just have to kind of open your horizons to different areas, and
Right.
look into solving
Right.
problems
Mm-hmm.
differently.
Right. So let's say if someone who's already working and they want to
Mhm.
diverge their career trajectory towards product management, what is
Mhm.
something that they should have in their portfolio to prove themselves competent for the role? I mean, either they have to do some tweaks in their work so that they can show that, hey, we've done some sort of planning, some sort of
Mhm.
requirement analysis, or we've done some
Oh.
certifications. So in that context, what do you think is the best way to market yourself out there in a legit way that you were up for it?
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good question, Sam. And I get this question a lot. Like, how do I get into product management? What's the way into the product
Uh-huh.
path? And the easy answer is that there is no one path. There are multiple ways that you can go about, being in this
Mm-hmm.
role. And I can start with in ascending and descending in easier to harder ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so the easiest way, obviously, would be to just, get into apply for a product role that you see, and then you do the interviews and then you get in.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's the easiest way, but that's really not how it works typically.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have to go through multiple loops and hoops and whatnot. So, the advice that I give to people that are reaching out when they want to go into product is, here's the thing: product to get into product, there's typically a very higher ceiling. Why? Because
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot more candidates and there's a lot less roles.
Mm-hmm.
The opposite is typically true for software engineering roles, where there's a lot more opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
and typically very few people also apply to those roles because it requires being very technical.
Right.
Whereas being a product manager, you don't really have to be super technical,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really open for people with for every role possible. So people
Mm-hmm.
with business degrees or technical degrees or art degrees can really apply and really do well in this role.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas a lot of people for software engineering roles. A lot of people from other areas like arts or business don't really apply for software engineering roles. So immediately you have a lot more higher competition for a product manager role.
Right.
And so the advice I give to people is, if you're already within a company, you're working, let's say, in a software role or a consultant role or whatever role that you're in, even if you're in HR, apply internally and switch internally within your current company
Mm-hmm.
and start getting some product experience, because the easiest way, as per my understanding, to get into a product role is
Mm-hmm.
to get existing product experience, and the fastest way to get existing product experience is by within your own company. And so that's the advice I'd want to put on here and give people, is that, obviously the easier way would be to just apply online for product roles. But again, as I mentioned, the ceiling is typically higher.
Mm-hmm.
And so the fastest way would be to, switch internally within your company, get into a product role, and then, after a few years, maybe a year and a half down the road, apply to other product roles at different companies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've seen this way work a lot for other people, and that's the advice I want to give here.
Yeah, that's a good piece of advice, I must say.
Mhm.
So, other than that, I want to touch base a little bit about, or touch base on cloud technology a little bit. Um,
Mhm.
to me, it's an amazing technology. It's an amazing
Mhm.
engine that you can hook it up to whatever thing, and it's going to speed up
Mhm.
your things. It's going to solve problems and whatnot. I love cloud technology and the applications
Mhm.
that it provides to end users.
Mhm.
So, for someone who wants to develop mastery, or bring more perfection in their craftsmanship, what's
Mhm.
the best way to do that? Because at times it becomes pretty daunting because it's an ocean of knowledge. So what's the best
Mhm.
way to upskill yourself in cloud technology?
Yeah, for sure. So, funny thing is, just before I became a product manager, I was a cloud solution architect at Microsoft for a couple of months,
Right.
and that was when I was after finishing my undergrad, and so I joined Microsoft as a new grad cloud solution architect,
Mm-hmm.
and so at the time I knew nothing about the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
Within months, I was tasked with diving deeper into learning everything there was about the cloud, so that I
Mm-hmm.
could actually start contributing to my team members, to
Mm-hmm.
customers, and whatnot. So
Mm-hmm.
this question is really good from that standpoint, because hopefully I can answer this question properly.
Right.
So my number one way,
Mm-hmm.
because there's so much information regarding the
Mm-hmm.
cloud online that's available, and so at times it can get overwhelming in terms of where do I start, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the easiest way, as I think from here for learning about the cloud, is to just do a little bit of research online through YouTube, through articles. Learn about the cloud, learn at the very basic, like what the cloud is, how it's divided into different categories and whatnot. And once you have that very basic knowledge, which should take anywhere between 2 to 5 hours, depending on how much you
Mm-hmm.
know and how technical you are,
Right.
go from there, start doing some certifications. And
Mm-hmm.
for me, I personally started with Azure because that's a product I was working on and the area I was working in.
Yeah.
But the thing about Azure or AWS or Google certifications is that they're very interchangeable. So just because you're using Azure, you won't limit yourself to Azure in the future. You
Yeah.
can use these words, and
Mm-hmm.
all of these technologies are used very interchangeably. And so as I was saying, after that initial research, 2 to 5 hours,
Mm-hmm.
get into a certification. Personally, I did the Azure 900 certification, which is like intro to the cloud,
Okay.
and it gave me a very good overview of what the cloud was, what Azure was, and that's really a good way to get started. So again, you don't have to kind of limit yourself to Azure. You can do
Yeah.
those initial certifications for AWS, for Google,
Yeah.
GCP, but it's
Yeah.
good to start with those certifications because they really will give you a thorough analysis of and detailed explanation of what cloud is, and
Mm-hmm.
and all that kind of stuff that comes along with it. And the best thing is you don't have to be technical for it, because
Yeah.
these certifications, they
Yeah.
understand that not everyone that's doing these certifications is going to be technical,
Yeah.
and so you don't have to worry about it from a perspective of being technical.
Yeah. And I really appreciate these companies putting in that effort that when they're
Hmm.
creating these
Yeah.
training material, the content, it is so nice that honestly, I agree with you that you do not need to have any
Yeah.
sort of technical depth when you start
Hmm.
from the very beginning.
Yeah.
They take you step by step and explain
For
everything
sure.
like you're a kid, right? And second of all, I mean, you're absolutely right that every it's like having a certain
Yeah.
functionality in a car. Lexus might call it something else, Mercedes might call it something else. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's something that I know that some companies, especially the ones that I worked at, they spend a lot of time, making sure that their certifications are accessible, and they're covering every aspect of really everything there is. And it's really complex, right? So thinking about it from a perspective of how do you make sure that your a technical certification is um, providing the relevant, details and explanations to cater to a non-technical and a technical audience. And so I know that these companies, they spend a lot of time diving deeper into their courses and making sure that they're thorough for everyone that's doing it. So 100% I agree with that. They
Right.
do spend a lot of time on this.
Yeah, interesting. So Ahmed, other than that, do you have any cool traditions at work that you can share with us here?
I would love to, talk about some Amazon
Mm-hmm.
traditions. Unfortunately, I haven't been there long enough, but at Microsoft, we had some cool traditions, such as, every Friday, I think every last Friday, they would typically give us a no meeting Friday. So,
Mm-hmm.
there is essentially no meetings. All you can do is just kind of take the day for yourself. In fact, I think before I moved
Mm-hmm.
to Amazon, just a couple weeks before, they moved every Friday to a no meeting Friday.
Nice.
And so essentially no meetings,
Yeah.
you just kind of focus on your work and kind of dive deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing was that I used to do at Microsoft was they'd really have us learn about customers, and so I thought that was a super cool product tradition for every product manager to learn a lot about what their customers are, going into live customer calls and learning about what
Mm-hmm.
customers want. I think that was really cool,
Mm-hmm.
because that's not something that I've seen well at different companies. And so, yeah, I think like some
Yeah.
of these cool work traditions really helped. But then again, that depends on the context, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
what exactly the traditions are and whatnot. So,
Right. No, that's pretty good, and I'm honestly, it makes me very happy that you're doing great. You're satisfied. You're happy, and at the end of the day, I think that's all that matters. Money is
for
one
sure.
thing, but I mean the people that you work with, the environment that you're in, you basically start adapting to it over
Hmm.
time. So I think it's nice that you're in a healthy environment, and I wish you all the best.
For sure.
So
Thank you.
other than that,
Appreciate it.
talking about academics a little bit, as a
Hmm.
student, how do you think university prepared you for working with almost every single tech company that someone from outside might dream of working for? I mean, it's amazing that you've been through the door of every single one of these companies. How do you think university actually prepared you for that?
Yeah. Again, that's another really good question, Osama. So I think for number one, I think I'm very blessed to be in this position where I've had the experience that I've had. But to kind of easily answer your question, if university prepared me for the real life, the reality is it didn't. And so I had to kind of learn a lot of things the hard way, which was spending a lot of nights learning and then preparing myself for being in this position that I am in, because university is very do your homework and you're good, prepare for your exam and you're good.
Mm-hmm.
We don't There are a lot of different things that come in a professional life that you don't really see in your university days, such as um, you know oftentimes you have disagreements at work, and in
Mm-hmm.
university, you don't typically have too many of those. And so, um, the real life really does prepare you when you dive deeper into it. You know how they say, everyone's going to learn eventually.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it means. Where you'll eventually, you know, you'll eventually learn when you dive into the real life,
Yeah.
and you start working towards it. You'll eventually learn. And so,
Mm-hmm.
to answer your question easily, did it prepare me? I wouldn't say it did,
Mm-hmm.
but it did give me a very good basic understanding of what I could expect. And that's why I think like going to universities is, it's a good start to be in
Mm-hmm.
the industry, but it wouldn't really prepare you for everything. And so I wouldn't say, when you're
Mm-hmm.
graduating university and you're going into your full-time career, to be like fully prepared for everything,
Mm-hmm.
that you know everything and whatnot. And that's another point that I want to talk about, which is like, don't go into your workplace after you graduate thinking that you know everything. Don't have that attitude, but it's not going to work
Oh,
out.
100%.
Always have the attitude of,
Yeah.
you want to learn it, not that you know it. So
Yeah.
kind of like a learn it all versus a know it all.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be the latter. Be the first one where you want to learn it,
Yeah.
not that you know everything. And so,
Right.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's a transition.
Uh-huh.
It's an iterative process. You will learn over time, but university was a good start. And
Right,
so,
amazing.
yeah.
Although Ahmed, you did touch base, or you did, or Ahmed, you did touch upon what I was about to ask you. But I mean, in just few sentences, if you were to put it together, for young professionals, what do you think should they start doing more of, and what should they stop doing? I
For
mean, in
sure.
terms of healthy habits versus bad habits.
Yeah, for sure. When it comes to university, or before your professional career, I think what I recommend people should do more of is networking, and learning about the different areas of opportunities there are. Um, One thing I want to touch upon very briefly is, oftentimes when we are in a particular degree, we're kind of pigeonholed into particular career paths. And for example, if you're doing computer science, a lot of times, a lot of people think that going into a software development career path is the only option, and that's not true. Just because you did computer science or software engineering or computer engineering at school, you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to be just involved into going into a software development career path. You have a lot of
Mm-hmm.
opportunities, and so that's why when I say network and learn about the different opportunities that are available as part of your
Mm-hmm.
degree, I think is something that more and more
Mm-hmm.
people and students should do. Um, what I think they shouldn't do is, as I mentioned, pretend like we know it all, because it's been 2 years since I graduated, and I
Mm-hmm.
definitely don't know what I'm doing. And it takes time to learn about it, right? And so having
Mm-hmm.
that open mindset that, that
Mm-hmm.
you're willing to learn, I think is very important, and it's something that we should keep an open mind of. So,
Amazing. And thank you for saying that. So now connecting this question to something which is slightly different, but it's very, very
hmm
relevant. In
hmm
my opinion, I think ethical behaviors are just as important for any business to succeed as much as technical craftsmanship is concerned. In your
for sure.
opinion, or I shouldn't say opinion, I mean, what are some of the core values that you take very seriously in your professional life and have really helped you succeed?
For sure. And so I think I want to divide this question up into two parts.
Mm-hmm.
And so the first part is being ethical from a obviously your own personality standpoint. Like, what do you want? What do you prioritize more over your technical capabilities? And then there's also looking at it from a work standpoint, right? What's
Mm-hmm.
considered ethical at work, what's not considered ethical, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so this was actually a question that was asked, and also in one of my interviews for Microsoft. So
Oh,
I
wow.
was in a
Okay.
privacy type of role
Yeah.
at Microsoft,
Uh-huh.
and being in privacy, you have a lot more, you can make a lot more impact than you think. Especially being in a big company like Microsoft, and working in a product like Xbox, which impacts a lot of millions and millions of people worldwide,
Mm-hmm.
and their, their privacy things. And so, this was one of the questions I was asked. And so the way I answered this question is, um, from an ethical standpoint, when it comes to customers, when it comes to data, what I want to make sure is that we don't collect anything that's not necessary, right? And so,
Absolutely.
even if collecting more data would end up ensuring that we make more money,
Mm-hmm.
what's more important? Is data more important? Being ethical here is more important, or is more money more important? Because I could generate more money for the product and eventually for my team, but
Yeah.
is that more ethical compared to collecting more data? And the short
Yeah.
answer is no, it's not.
Right.
Because we want to make sure that, we customer data is something that customers give us. They give us the opportunity to do it, to handle this data for them.
It's a
And
token
so,
of trust, essentially, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It's they're trusting us with their data,
Yeah.
right? And so it's only fair that it's a two-way street from our side as well, where we
Mm-hmm.
ensure and work really, really hard to protect their side of things as well, to protect their data, and
Mm-hmm.
make sure that we're not really collecting anything that's not necessary. So, personal data or to
Mm-hmm.
non-personal data, whatever different categories there may be in there, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
um, I guess that's a small explanation of what I consider ethical versus
Yeah.
non-ethical at work. And then obviously
Okay.
there are personal traits as well, right? Where,
Yes.
what do I prioritize more? And so, I guess that's a huge, deeper discussion that we could possibly have later down the road.
Yeah, 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 for sure, for sure. Ahmed, other than that, tech world is something that is very fast paced, changing almost every day. Uh,
Mhm.
how do
Sure.
you, as a product manager, keep yourself up to date with these changing trends in the tech industry?
Yeah, it's definitely difficult staying up to date because there's so many changes that are happening. But it's really about being proactive, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know that we're in the tech industry, and so it's fast, it's ever changing. There's new and more different ways to solving problems and whatnot. So
Mm-hmm.
the short answer is like you just have to do your due diligence to stay up to date with the latest trends, the latest tasks, and um, I wouldn't say like you have to kind of evolve with everything that's happening. Like you don't have, if you're a software developer, you don't have to,
Mm-hmm.
know everything that there is about all the programming
Mm-hmm.
languages that are changing. You can just focus on some very small
Mm-hmm.
ones and just be, up to date with those because that's the skill that you'll eventually need later down the road. And so
Mm-hmm.
don't destroy yourself trying to learn everything because there's a very good chance you can't, right? And
Yes,
so,
of course, and that's what I've realized over time as well. Your human brain has an upper limit. There is a
exactly.
point when it saturates. You can't learn everything.
Exactly. 100%. And so I
Yeah.
wouldn't say like, it's go dive deeper into trying to learn everything because that's not going to happen. What you can
Mm-hmm.
do is prioritize. Look into things that you're more interested in, that you find more creative or that you find more interesting, and then learn about those. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
think as an industry, we've set some very unhealthy
Mm-hmm.
expectations from everyone in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like, what they should know versus what they shouldn't know. And so I think it's important to realize that not everyone can know everything, and
Yeah.
it's good to be inclusive from that aspect.
Right. And now that we're heading towards the ending of our conversation, Ahmed, I want to end it on a few journal questions, but still somewhat relevant to our day-to-day work life as well. So the first
Sure.
one is going to be, what are some of the things that you think are productive that you've incorporated in your life that have really
Mhm.
helped you?
Yeah, I think reading is something that I find very productive.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's purely from a personal standpoint. It really helps me kind of focus on what's in front of me at the time. And so, reading is something that I enjoy very much. And so it's something that I would say
Mm-hmm.
that, it makes me productive. because it really helps me focus on what's in front of me at the time instead of, oftentimes when we're doing something, we often start looking into this and that versus this and that. Whereas when I'm reading, I know that I'm just focused on the text that's in front of me. And at that
Mm-hmm.
point, I have my phone off. I have, all my notifications off, everything, so that I can
Yeah.
just
Oh, I
focus at
love
that
that
time.
feature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I find I think that's for me.
Amazing. And other than that, I want to ask about imposter syndrome here.
Mhm.
Let's say when you were in school, you worked hard, you dedicated time for yourself, you worked on your personality and your tech skills, you
Mhm.
became a shark. Now you were in this big pool, let's say Google, Microsoft, wherever. Now you're like,
Mhm.
oh shit, I'm a small fish in a big pool now.
Yeah.
So how do
Yeah.
you deal with imposter syndrome?
Yeah, again, that's a really good question, and I really do want to clarify this one thing. Like, I was, and I'm in no way a shark. I think I have seen a lot of people that have, that are ones, but again, I'm very lucky to be here and very grateful to be here. So number one thing is, like, I was never I would say the most strongest academic person in the classroom. But as I want to tie it up with a few points, which was like, I've always been the one who
Mm-hmm.
has tried to network and, learn about
Mm-hmm.
everything there was, something on things that I liked doing. Again, you can't
Mm-hmm.
learn everything, but you can prioritize what you want to learn. And so, I was I was the kid who always was up to speed on, all the tasks that I needed to do and whatnot when I was in school. And so, when I got to work, when I got into my professional career, I realized that I didn't know as much as I thought I did. And so imposter syndrome hits everyone differently. But the short answer is, if you're a new grad or if you're someone, who's diving into a new career path, the reality is you won't know everything. And that's okay, because it'll take some time to learn what you're doing, where you're at, and how to transition into that particular role. Um, I would say, something that's very underrated is asking for help while you're at work, because a lot of people think it may make them seem more vulnerable and more open to, criticism, and that's not
Mm-hmm.
true. Utilize your teammates, utilize your coworkers, and learn, because that's the only way that you'll ramp up, and get over that existing initial imposter syndrome. Even
Right.
I would be lying if I said that it wasn't something I had experienced in my early career as well. And so,
Mm-hmm.
even in my day to day, there's a lot of things that I don't know, but I think I've grown comfortable with asking, and sharing when I don't know what I don't know, and just being open about it. Whether that's in a meeting or whether that's, anywhere. If I don't know something, it's important to just say, "Hey, I don't know, but I want to learn more about it." And that's
Mm-hmm.
just, my one way of dealing with imposter syndrome, because it sets the expectation right. So.
And with that, we've had the end of our conversation. Ahmed, thank you so much once again for being here with us. I had an amazing time talking to you today. And as far as our audience are concerned, if you like the content, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to show your support. And of course, share it with your friends and family. Do let us know about your feedback in the comments. And until the next episode rolls out, take care of yourselves and see you soon. Bye.